Iran's attack yesterday was launched in retaliation for Israel's strike on the Iranian consulate in Syria earlier this month. At least 12 people were killed in that attack, including 3 senior Iranian commanders. Iran's attack yesterday, however, largely failed to hit any targets inside of Israel. According to the Israel Defense Forces, 99% of the 300-plus projectiles fired at Israel were intercepted. Damage inside the country was minimal. Iran's mission to the United Nations wrote in a statement, quote, "The matter can be deemed concluded now." However, Iran also warns any potential future attacks against it will be met with responses that would be, quote, "more severe." I'm joined now by Jamal Abdi, president of the National Iranian American Council and executive director of its sister organization, NIAC Action. Jamal, thanks for joining us today. I wanted to get to something that just came out within the last half an hour, according to the Associated Press. The state-run Iranian news agency saying that they are warning the United States against any cooperation with Israel in any new attack. And they did this through the Swiss embassy, which is handling U.S. interests in Iran right now in the absence of diplomatic relations, as you know so well. What do you make of that? Is that just part of the course of what Iran might be doing as they have in the past?
I think this has been an interest of Iran from the very beginning of this current conflict. And I think that the strikes that Iran conducted were sort of clearly choreographed and aimed at demonstrating Iran's capabilities without triggering a response that could potentially start this regional war that I think so many of us have feared. And so I think there have been clear communications from Iran in this regard, whereas Netanyahu, I think, has sought to brought the U.S. into this conflict. And I think for Iran, it's important that they stay out.
So if this has the element, which I think what you're saying partially here, the element of political theater, then, is this being done well based on the statement coming from the state-run news agency this morning? You're saying the type of missiles that were used, the timing of the missiles, the lead up to it, and actually telegraphing that this would be happening. If this is all part of what they want to be done, will this then lead to a non-response from Israel at this point, you think?
This is the million-dollar question. I think it was surprising that somewhat surprising that these attacks were launched from Iran proper and not from some other location. So that is maybe more provocative than we would have thought going into this. That being said, this is all, I think the Iranians and the U.S. and the Biden administration are really concerned about. Where does Israel take this? And from the beginning, from the assassination, the bombing of the consulate in Damascus, is this about expanding the war? Has Iran sort of given Netanyahu this invitation to do what he had already planned, which was to regionalize this? So it really remains to be seen.
They, in the statement that was made, again, to the mission to the United Nations from Iran, this could be more severe. What could more severe look like based on, I'll say the obvious question, the concern of nuclear-tipped missiles?
Well, Iran does not have that capability. Their nuclear program has accelerated significantly since Donald Trump abandoned the nuclear agreement, but they're not there yet. And that is the other question looming over this. Is this finally what incentivizes Iran to cross that threshold and actively pursue nuclear weapons? I think there is an argument here for deterrence that probably has gained credence over the past couple of weeks.
Is it more proxy activity, perhaps, right, Jamal?
I think there's certainly the concern about proxy activity, about Hezbollah getting involved. I think that is a major potential vulnerability that could spark even more conflict. So there are certainly ways for Iran to potentially ratchet this up, and I think it's notable that the statements they're putting out is essentially, we said our piece, now this is concluded, and maybe this can be the end of it for now.
So this is history-making in the Middle East, this attack that happened overnight. Is this then also an indication of a loss of a moderate voice in leadership in Iran?
Well, I think that inside of Iran, the sort of hardline conservatives have really consolidated power, and so there is not a lot of significant debate featuring moderate or reformist voices. So I think that path has already sort of been embarked upon. I think the real questions now are, does this get reined in, or does this introduce sort of a new wartime environment for Iran where you have IRGC and other elements really consolidating power and operating as a wartime nation, which I think would be really terrible for the Iranian people who are already suffering under massive sanctions and state repression. And so I think everybody is really, at least for myself, really praying that this is the end of this and that the Biden administration steps in and figures out how to de-escalate, because things can only get worse, I think, for all the people of the region.
Yeah. No more new thresholds, please, is what you're saying. Jamal Abdi, thank you so much. President of the National Iranian American Council.